falling to the ground, he heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And this is interesting because who is Saul persecuting? Who's Saul persecuting? It's not a trick question. He's ravaging what? The church, the Christians, which is who? Let's look at it. Why are you persecuting me? He says, who are you, Lord? And that's Saul's conversion right there. He calls him Lord. He has it figured out, right? Not quite. I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. And here's where it's so crazy, because these big theophanies, these appearances of God that happen in Jewish apocalyptic literature and other literature of the time, when something like this happens, when this big light knocks somebody off their feet, it's supposed to be judgment. They're finding them with their hands in the temple money. They're finding them stealing from somebody else. They're finding them doing something, and now I'm going to get you. But that's not what happens for Paul. That's not what happens here. Why are you persecuting me? Why are you doing this? It's not, I got you now, and now you're going to pay. It is this big, grand gesture that probably scared the living daylights out of him. But it reminds me of a quotation from C.S. Lewis: the hardness of God is kinder than the softness of men. And his compulsion is our liberation. His compulsion is our liberation. When Lewis wrote that, he's talking about Luke 14. Remember, Acts is the sequel to Luke. Luke is writing Luke and Acts. Luke 14, the end of the parable of the great banquet, when people are gone, are told to go out and invite everyone to this great banquet that the master's having. It's supposed to be this symbol of what heaven is going to be, and they don't attend. They choose not to attend. What are the servants told to do? Go out into the highways and the hedges and what? Compel them to come in. Make them come in. God's compulsion is our liberation. Do you think Saul felt compelled when a light shone around him that blinded him to listen? I don't think we would call it a nice thing, but I think we can call it a good thing. I don't think we could call it the most amenable thing to Paul, but it was the thing that Paul needed the most.
I always really related to Paul's testimony. If y'all don't know, I had this whole period where I was not super serious about Christianity whatsoever. And then supernaturally, I was out delivering the mail one day, and a bolt of lightning, similar to Kevin, bolt of lightning. As I was praying, it's a long story, but as I was praying, I was like...
Was that Martin Luther too?
Yes, I relate to Martin Luther very strongly as well. But I was out delivering the mail, and I just prayed essentially like, oh God, prove yourself to me. If you're real, kill me. Like not in those words, but sort of like that. And so I prayed that like literally 30 seconds before, and I was driving down the street in my little mail truck, and I was getting ready to hop out, deliver a package, and a bolt of lightning came down and struck a tree like on the other side of that window. Like, it was like that close. It was the loudest and brightest thing I've ever heard. But even louder in my brain, spirit, I don't know. I heard the exact words, ask, and you will receive, O ye of little faith. And I said, okay, don't kill me. But from that moment, God was like, I want you to be serious about this. And I got serious, and the authenticity and truth of Christianity has come alive for me since then in ways I could have never imagined.
Well, and it says a lot that you did, because I think, unfortunately, a lot of us, if we asked for a sign, we'd be more like, Gideon, and be like, what about another sign?
Right. No, it was very clear. It was terrifying.
You didn't want a second bolt of lightning?
Nope. It was the most terrifying experience in my life.
If there's nothing else, you think you could apply any of this in the coming days? Or maybe leave this place, go out to the world?
Just trying to not force Christ into people's lives, but just, gently ease the thought of, the Christian life isn't what you think it is. And what you're doing isn't as right as you think it is. So just evangelizing more with people that you wouldn't normally evangelize with. Like, this person won't accept Christ because of this. Don't go into it with the mindset of they're already going to say no. Just go into it with hoping, praying to God that this person will accept Christ.
Something we can take from this is to try and be more like Ananias, the way that he didn't go off of Saul's past. I mean, at the beginning he did, but whenever he went in, he completely threw that out the window and went in as his brother in Christ and accepted him. And just to be able to look past the differences of someone, look past all the things that they've done in the past, and look at who they are now in Christ and be able to help build them up in the faith.
Right. This is a picture from 1961. It's the year of the first freedom rides. See, in 1947, a law had been passed that interstate bus travel cannot be segregated. At bus stations, bus bathrooms, all over the country could no longer abide by laws that said separate but equal, even if there were the laws currently in those states. And so a group of 13 people in 1961, black and white, decided to ride buses through Tennessee, Virginia, Georgia, and Alabama, and Mississippi, to prove that the law had already been changed, that this was right. The black people that rode on the bus used the bathrooms marked for white people. The white people that rode on the bus used the bathrooms that were marked for black people. When they got to these towns, they were met with, let's just say, opposition. Some of them were beaten. Almost to the point of death. One of them was who became Congressman John Lewis, who's in this next picture with one of his friends. They ran from the bus station in South Carolina and took refuge in this young woman's home. This is where she took this picture. He didn't know who it was. It wasn't the police. It was just people that had gathered at the bus station to beat them. Two people did most of the beating. They didn't know who it was. They ran. They didn't try to fight back. That wasn't what they were there for. It was a non-violent movement, just to do what the law allowed them to do. In 1961, almost 40 years later, one of the men who beat John Lewis for getting on a bus, committing no crime, just getting on a bus and being black, wrote an article for his local paper saying, I was one of those people, and asking for forgiveness. He reached out himself to John Lewis. And Elwyn Wilson, instead of reaching out in anger with clenched fists, reached out with arms open to embrace and hands asking for forgiveness. They sat down for an interview. This was in 2009, I believe. John Lewis passed away this year. 2009. For him to talk about all the ways, all of the things that he had done. He didn't just leave it at this. It wasn't just a photo op. He didn't want to do this. They called him after he wrote that article and asked him to come do this. I mean, Good Morning America thought it would be a good story. John Lewis wanted to be there with him to offer that forgiveness. He starts recounting all of the ways, all of the things that he's done, all of the false things he used to believe about people who were a different color than him. And there's video of it. You can look. John Lewis doesn't break eye contact with him. He says, I forgive you. I love you. We all bear the image of God. Powerful thing when ideologies change. When we look at a ravager of the church who becomes one of its strongest proponents, it doesn't just affect the people who see this story as somebody who came from one side of the spectrum to the other. It affects everyone who sees themselves in Saul's position. It affects everyone who sees themselves as an object of Saul's wrath. It allows them to see what a gracious, merciful, active God can do in a world that desperately needs Him. And it allows us to be a part of it.